Right. Thanks everybody for joining us for our second entrepreneurship talk in this WIMSA series. I'd like to hand over to our chair, Petro, who will do an intro and a welcome for us. Petro, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. And like Zava said, welcome to our second entrepreneurship workshop, it's more of a workshop today, or more of a discussion today. So welcome to our session. We hope to have many more of these in the future. And I'd like to thank Yusave for organizing these for us. So she's been running with it and organizing it for us. And I'll let her also, you're going to introduce the panel, right, Yusave? You'll introduce them, or they'll introduce themselves. And so welcome everybody, and I hope you enjoy it. And if it would be quite nice if you, during the course of the evening, if you ask a question, just put your camera on so we can see you and know you're out there, and we can wave at you. So enjoy it and ask lots of questions. Thanks, Yusavia.
Thank you so much, Petro. These talks have come up because the people have spoken. A lot of interest in entrepreneurship, in business, female business in mining, and how to navigate that. So we did have our first talk, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, with Dr. Kitumetsi Lekaba. That's available on record if anybody wants to watch it. You just go to our WIMSA page. But what we're doing with this particular talk is talking to people who are very close to business, women business in mining. So we've got some entrepreneurs in the room, and also somebody close to compliance and finance as well, and really helping us make sense and give us some insight into what business is for females in the mining industry, particularly small businesses, but definitely not only as you grow as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panel. So maybe starting with Reina, if you'd like to go and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Yusavia. Good evening to everybody on the call. Thanks so much for the opportunity. As Yusavia mentioned, my name is Reina Singh, and I'm one of the directors of a company called NG Global Energy Solutions, or just NG Global for short. So NG Global is quite a diversified company. We're into commodity supply as well as technical consulting. So the business has a footprint in Mpumalanga, Northwest, and the Northern Cape. And presently, we are supplying about 1 million tons per annum of coal, manganese, and iron ore to various clients within the local and as well as abroad. So we specialize in providing end-to-end solutions to our clients. So what that means is that we source the product based on the grade, the requirement from the mine, and we also deliver, so either via road, rail, or sea freight, mainly out of RBCT. So our services also include operations management, quality management across the supply chain, and as well as ensuring that there's performance at the end user application. Some of our end user applications, they exist within the cement, fertilizer, as well as power plant industry. The other part of the business is also technical consulting. So this is really the anchor for sustainability in the business. And here we collaborate a lot with the Department of Science and Innovation and the CSIR on R&D projects. There's also a field in process engineering, as well as mentoring of junior engineers.
Thank you so much, Reina. Definitely impressive position that you have there, and really looking forward to hearing more about it through this talk. Moving over to Bryony.
Thanks so much, Yusavia. I think I'm on the complete other end of the continuum when you compare Reina's business to mine. I'm a one-person business, have been for the last 5 years. I focus on coaching women in STEM careers to show up more courageously and compassionately in their work environment and to make the transition from technical to strategic positions. My footprint is sort of global because a lot of my work is done virtually. And I would say that became a hell of a lot more over the course of COVID, because suddenly we could only work virtually, and it opened a lot of doors to people who didn't used to work with me because they insisted on seeing me in person. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Bryony. I think most people on the call do know you, but thanks for the intro anyway. Moving over to Marsha, who I worked with for many years. Marsha?
First time I met you, you had a white tracksuit on a black mine full of black dust. And I thought, shucks, is this a fashion model or what? It was definitely you, Yusavia. Okay, so I just thought for me, a very fast introduction is that I went from being a professional employee with a mining house to a contractor, to a closed corporation, to a PTY Limited, and now back to being an employee. So that's my 1 minute. If you want me to give a bit more, I can do it.
I think that's fine, because we're definitely going to delve into the details of your journey, which I think is going to be very insightful. But thanks, Marsha, for that. Mole.
Colleagues, thanks for the opportunity. So when you said Mole, I looked around to see if there's another Mole, because my full name is Mole Bacheng. But no, it's cute. I like it. I like it. So I have been working for just over 12 years. I was in mining for about 6 years. Background, my undergrad is in geology. I quickly diversified my skill set from an academic point of view. After I joined the mining industry, I did a postgraduate diploma in business. I did a master's in business. And once I managed to get into corporate, mainly doing corporate finance at the time, I decided to do a master's in finance just so I could develop expertise for the area that I'm now in, and not just offer technical expertise, because the whole point of employing me was to offer technical expertise. But I wanted to also offer and rather add value at a more strategic level, from a strategy point of view, from a finance point of view, from a diversification point of view, from an investment point of view, from a corporate governance point of view. So I've been doing, and I've done some small courses. I've done leading economic growth, which is sort of developing expertise in leading complex projects with Harvard University. I've done my black belt Sigma because, you know, fundamentally I'm still hired as a technical person, which I embrace quite a lot. In terms of the positions that I hold in the industry, I'm a project developer within the IDC. I also sit as an investment committee member / I guess a director at DTIC on one of their funds called CPFP. They also fund feasibility projects, and I'd like to say, ladies, we're not getting enough applications from women projects in Africa. So, you know, even if we have a conversation offline, if you want to know more about it. I've done exciting projects mostly in Africa with international partners, strategic partners, whether from an equity point of view, from a technical point of view. I've had to sharpen my skills in terms of commercial agreements, because most of the transactions that go sour in Africa is mainly because of the commercial contracting aspect. And I'm gonna stop here, Yusavia, so that, you know, I don't overwhelm the colleagues with the little that I've done in the industry. So there's an opportunity to further discuss some of the experiences as I also learn from the other colleagues. Yeah, so that's it.
Look, I mean, that's very inspirational, and I can see us pulling you into a few other conversations to talk about how you've diversified in your career. So excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Betso.
Thanks, Yusavia. Evening, ladies. It's been a pleasure to be invited to this platform. My name is Betsu. I'm from Deloitte Consulting. I joined Deloitte 9 years ago, where I specialize in supply chain, but recently I'm the delivery lead on ESD execution programs. So we are mostly involved with our mining clients in terms of transforming them and working with them in the journey of enterprise supply development. Thanks, Yusavia.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists for joining me. This was a long time in the making, so really appreciate your patience. So I'd like to start with a little poll that I'm going to launch. and just get our current audience members to tell us a little bit more about who they are and a little bit about what they feel in terms of entrepreneurship. We can delve into these insights as we talk, but it's good just to get a barometer of how people are feeling in the room. So I'm going to launch the poll and it should come up on your screen. Fingers crossed. Awesome. So you can feel free just to go through it. I'll just keep it on for about 2 minutes or so.
So it's not for us, eh? It's for the...
You can definitely
we just
answer. I think we're almost close to 100% response rate. Just going to give it another 20 seconds. We're sitting at a 78% response right now. Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you, ladies, for that. Let me give you a little bit of a rundown of the answers and who's in the room. So tell us more about who you are. 23% of the audience in here are existing entrepreneurs or business owners. Thank you very much for joining us. 35% are aspiring entrepreneurs in mining. That's awesome. Malebachang, I'm sure you're happy to hear that. And a large proportion, 42%, just interested in the topic. Excellent. I think that's great. So am I. One of the most complex aspects to navigate in female mining entrepreneurship. Being taken seriously, 23%. There's quite a distribution here. There's not much that standing out in this particular question. Navigating commercial and securing tenders and work, 35% of the audience. Developing profitable business ideas, 31%. Navigating the financial side of business, 12%. So I think the financial acumen, people feel a bit confident with. That's great. How well versed are you on the mining charter stipulations for female-owned business in mining? I have this in the bag. 12%, I know, Betso, you have to be part of that 12%. I know a bit, 42%. And not at all, please school me, 46%. So a large proportion of us don't really know what the regulatory framework is stipulating and how it's supporting females in business. So definitely we'll delve into that. And last question, is enough being done to develop female participation in mining business? 0% says yes. I agree. We're at 35% neutral and 65% of us say no, not enough is being done to develop female participation in mining business. Having said that, I do think it'll be interesting to hear a little bit about the mining charter to educate ourselves on what the regulatory framework is doing, because it does seem that that's a bit of a blind spot. Okay, so thanks so much for that, ladies. Really appreciate the responses there. So yeah, I'm going to get right into it, and maybe starting with that, where people feel that they want to be schooled a little bit. So we hear so much about the mining charter, and on an overall basis that it's being used to drive transformational change in the industry. So can you give us a rundown of what the Charter stipulates for female business in particular?
Okay, thanks for that question, Eusebia. It's a very important question, I must say. Just to give you an overall view, the key objectives of the Mining Charter is to promote inclusive procurement. By that, I mean, for instance, if a mining house is on a transformation journey, 70% of the procurement budget should be spent on locally manufactured goods by year 5. Meaning this, by 70%, we are inclusive of female-owned businesses as well. Because by saying that, they will be contributing 5% by year 5 to their transformation journey. So we need to procure goods and services from South African manufactured goods, which are produced by our women. So women, you are encouraged to get into mining.
So just repeat that bit. So out of the 70%, 5% is the target that they're looking for female-owned business from a local procurement sense.
That's very correct, Eusebia. So 5% in year 5 throughout the transformation journey will be contributed by, we need to procure from our female-owned businesses.
So if 5% is the target, obviously yes, we are performing lower than that, which means, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement. So can you explain what ESD is and what industry is doing to drive female participation in procurement, and whether you feel that that is enough?
Okay, thanks for that question. You know, ESD, it's prescribed by the codes of good practice, right? Whilst inclusive procurement, it's prescribed by the Mining Charter. However, they have similar objectives, of which the main objective is that we need to spend 3% of the net profit after tax to fund both our small business, that is your EMEs, as well as QSEs. Now, leading to your second question about, are we making an impact as ESD? Definitely, we are making an impact. I can safely say in the past 4 years at one of our clients, we funded 17 beneficiaries, or rather applicants, to the value of 86 million. And to answer your third question about, are we doing enough? Definitely, there's always room for improvement, whereby we need to ensure that we run our ESG programs in a sustainable way. By that, I mean, we need to shift the business mindset into value beyond compliance. And value beyond compliance doesn't look at businesses, the mining houses, ticking boxes in terms of compliance to the codes of good practice governance, but rather what value are we adding to our local suppliers that is inclusive of our female-owned businesses, whereby are we making an impact in making sure that we are creating more jobs? Are we contributing towards that business? Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you, Beth. So I think lots to chew on there, and a lot of jargon that I think, you know, people will do a little bit of homework to understand a little bit better. But thanks for that. And maybe, you know, just changing lanes to get the perspective of somebody who is in industry and looking for obviously sustainable work and to grow business. Reina, you know, along the track of what Betso was saying, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with the process of applying for work within the mining industry? And you can expand on how you become aware of work that's available. How do you position yourself against large suppliers? Because that's always going to be a challenge as somebody who is still growing. Of course, you've grown to a point at this stage, but maybe if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey through procurement and commercial in the industry.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question, Yusavi. I think it's a really good one. And I can definitely share a couple of insights from my personal experience. You know, I think right at the outset, it's quite important to understand that, you know, the mining industry, while it's seen as quite a hard industry, is quite compliance heavy and bureaucratic, I think, for very good reason. You know, with that, when you start off, it's quite important to have, you know, your due diligence and all your checks and balances in place. I remember when NG Global first submitted its first tender, it looked like a set of encyclopedias, you know, and I couldn't believe that we actually got to that point, but we did. So, you know, I think it's important to have certain compliance checks in place. One is your company documents, one is your financials. Let it be a true and accurate reflection of your business and your strategy as a business. Reference letters are a very important aspect as well, and I'll touch on a bit more about that later. And then, of course, safety and environmental, which is quite a massive topic in the mining industry. And I think when you start off, you're a bit of a jack of all trades. So it's important to get people involved who can steer you in a way that makes you competent with certain things. For example, like the Mines Health and Safety Act, the Railway Safety Regulations, etc. All of these form a big part of doing work within the mining sector. I think, to the point of reference letters, a little bit of a personal story about me. So, when I started off and I opened NG Global Energy Solutions, you as an entrepreneur, you don't really have previous references to go on. So I actually approached some of my previous employers, and in my past life, I was a process engineer. So I worked a lot in engineering and manufacturing environments, also in the mining industry. And, I was fortunate enough that some of the employers were able to draft, reference letters for me on their letterheads using my name and my ID number. So that formed part of my initial compilation to that set of encyclopedias I spoke about. So, that's one way right at the beginning, to ensure that, your company meets certain compliance checks to apply for work within the mining sector. I think, Betso touched on a number of really good points, including female entrepreneurs in the industry is quite a big one. Within NG Global, we've gone to a point where, the team that we have is pretty diverse, both in terms of, gender as well as cultural. On our board, we have a 50% female representation. And, the one thing that I've noticed between men and women, which is quite an interesting point, the ease of which we do business as women versus men. I've seen that, men, they can collaborate a lot more among each other. They're able to bring in that value add point that Betso mentioned. So it's important to look at the skill set and the value add that you can bring, and really to overcome some of the unconscious biases that you have, both of yourself as well as other females that you want to collaborate with within the industry. So, I think that's a little bit about my personal experience, how to firstly get into work within the mining industry, and also to participate a little bit more as a female entrepreneur.
Thanks so much, Reina. I think there's so many good points that you're making in there. And I really like the one that you mentioned around using the letters of reference as sort of building your credibility, because in addition to these encyclopedias that you created, along with proof of compliance or how you will comply, you still needed that extra reference in order to get your foot through the door. And I suppose that's a challenge for anybody as they want to enter the industry. And maybe just on that, Marsha, as the founder of a business that had been very long-standing in the industry, can you briefly walk us through the founding of Sable and its growth in the industry? Because you've had to go through that journey of first proving the credibility and maintaining it as you go.
Thank you. I think in line with what Reina said, I started with a mining house, fortunately a very progressive one. So the product was an in-house development. So I was employed as a computer geologist in my professional capacities with computer science and geology as a BSc. So, and that was for 5 years. So I had some competency, and I had some references, and I had a client that believed in me. So thereafter, now, of course, as ladies, we married, and often our husband doesn't want to be in Johannesburg, especially if they're a geologist. So now my husband wants to leave and go into exploration. So now I must leave. So at that stage, I went into a joint venture with this same company, because I'd already started developing this product. I did a lot of things, but one of them was this product called Sable, which did a certain job, which is bringing standards to the geological data so that people could compile all the data together into a database so it could become usable and so on. So, and it's a story that never ends. But so now I began a joint venture between that company, Angloval, and then there was a computer company called GEMCOM in those days, Geotechnical Engineering Mining Computing, which was a Canadian company, and myself. So I was doing the development. GEMCOM was supposed to sell the product, and Angloval supplied the hardware. And I think they paid me a bit of a retainer or something like that to support their own mines, their own projects. So it's good if you can get some sort of a relationship. So in other words, I built on a relationship that was already strong. They believed in me and they liked what I was doing because it was adding value to them as a mining house. So then it got to a point, as sometimes happens when you're in these joint ventures, that there's certain parties that are doing nothing and you end up doing everything. So I went to Angloval, and now this is 1989. That was 1987. I said, look, I don't think this is worth my while. Let me just go back to being a contract programmer. Because I was getting work with some of the mines around. I was living in Barberton, so those gold mines, and writing the development and mining stats, which we've got other names for now. And I said, look, let me just go and be a contract programmer. This is not worth my while. So the geologists went to the board of Angloval, and in 1989, they ceded the copyright of Sable to me personally. Now, that is a major thing. And that company, Angloval, now, I don't know if anybody has watched Alec Hogg. Have you watched any of those Biz News, MoneyWeb programs? Because he's been interviewing, he's been interviewing his son, Bob Hersoff. And I mean, I just can't believe it because the parent company was so entrepreneurial. I mean, the son is here in South Africa now saying, I came back because I love the country, and he's establishing a stock exchange for IT in Cape Town. I mean, this guy is such an entrepreneur. So it's a culture as well, you know, in a company, I've realized. But anyway, so they ceded the copyright to me, and they said in exchange for a few things, they said our exploration will use it for free or something, but we'll pay you to support us, and we must please, you can sell it to our mines. So that was 1989. So now I had this thing. So I up until then, I was developing the software. So now I brought in other developers. And actually, they were Russians. Well, I thought chauvinism was bad in South Africa, but now I learned what it really is. Okay, yes. Anyway, but they had to learn a few things, actually. Okay, so I brought in other developers, so I could implement and train, and then they would do the development. Then, you know, I would tell them what to do. And of course, they didn't like being told what to do by a woman. But anyway, so now we could take on more commodities than I'd been doing with Angloval, and we could take on more applications. And then now that was 1993, now I got to 1999. And now we found we had to have an even more versatile product, more applications, larger scope for more clients, because a lot of the mining houses started bringing their IP to us and saying, please, Sable as a company, well, this is an in-house development, but we're very reliant on it. And we need somebody to turn it into something that can be supported. So that started happening to us. There are some pitfalls, but I'm not going to talk about it now. But so that was 1999. So the platform had to get more versatile to be able to handle that. And then now we get to 2004, where we have a much more comprehensive, powerful platform we had to bring in. So in software, you're re-architecting for a new market and for what you're doing now and for the world as it is now. So you can't just sit with the same product and think you're going to get through. And now we started supporting the legislation, SAMREC, all the South African mining reporting codes, the mineral reporting codes and the SAM codes. So, and all the security that these SOCs and these people need. I think I can stop there. Eh?
I think, Marsha, one of the themes that's coming out very strongly in what you're saying is that you understood your value proposition from the very beginning and continue to grow that and maintain it throughout the year and that has to change, because as the industry is dynamic, you have to change and make sure that you're continually delivering into that. So I think that's very key. And again, touching on the compliance, you talked about SAMRIC. So, given that the industry that we work in is so highly regulated, I think that's also fairly a point that's coming out strongly between you and Reina as well. But yeah, I have learned a lot about Sable in this conversation that I didn't know previously. So thanks very much for that. That's interesting. Bryony, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you developed your value proposition. So you leaped in terms of your career, and maybe you can take us through the epiphany, and I don't know if it was an epiphany or if it was like a slow journey to understand that actually your value proposition lies elsewhere compared to what you were previously doing. Of course, I'm sure you added value there as well, but maybe talk us through the career journey and how you developed your business and the value proposition, because it is a fairly unique one compared to many of the entrepreneurs we speak to today.
Yeah, I think my journey is quite different to Raina and Marsha's, and I'll come to why shortly. But I spent 18 years working in the mining industry and consulting, and 12 of those years were with SRK Consulting. And my journey went from being a junior straight out of university through to being a partner in the Johannesburg office. And in that journey, I managed large teams of environmental scientists and engineers, and I was part of lots of feasibility studies and due diligences and risk assessments and so on. And one of the things that I started to notice, well, there were two things. The first one was that the transition from being technically competent to being a manager and a leader of others requires completely different competencies. And so many people move into management without any understanding of what those competencies are and wing it. Some wing it well, most wing it really badly. And they mimic what they see others doing. And particularly in the mining industry, I think many of the old guard have gone through military training and the kind of the tough mining kind of mentality. And that comes through in a lot of the leadership. And so many people adopt that as their example. And it's not necessarily the best leadership approach. So that was the one thing for me, was that I'm a very people person type of person. And I thought I would be a natural leader and manager, and I sucked. Okay. So I really struggled because I couldn't delegate. I really struggled with trust. I was a people pleaser, so I was always kind of picking up other people's stuff and fixing stuff for people. And sure, there were parts of my management and leadership style that were good. And I built really good relationships with some of the younger members of my team and younger members of the team in other departments. But I burnt quite a few bridges with my peers because I burnt out quite badly through my people pleasing and struggling to delegate. The second thing I noticed was that I was working with a lot of young professionals who were very much in a mindset of, I'm an employee, the opportunities must come to me, and I get paid, I must be trained. I am really just a post box of taking information from one report and putting it into another. So a lot of cut and paste stuff. And then expressing a huge amount of boredom at the same time and kind of saying, well, I've got a master's degree, but I don't feel like I ever add any value. And so we had a lot of conversations around what your job actually is, how to add value, what's valuable to your customer, who your customers actually are, and a lot of personal development. And I found myself doing a lot of mentoring and coaching of people in and outside of my department. And that became something that I really enjoyed and I wanted to do more of. But I think because I went through serious burnout, I was having panic attacks at work and crying on the way to work and really not kind of managing to get myself out of bed on many days. I was showing up in a way that wasn't the way that I would like to have shown up. And it's not a particular period in my life that I'm particularly proud of, but I've learned a hell of a lot from it. And so where I say I'm different to Raina and Marcia is that I couldn't leverage my network. I left the organization feeling really broken. I think I had left a lot of people experiencing me as in a bad way. And when I tried to leverage those networks, it fell flat. So one of the things I had to do was completely reinvent myself. But the kind of the light bulb moment for me was that I really loved building future leaders of South Africa. And I really enjoyed the work and the conversations that I was having with young professionals, and the aha moment when they went, now I get how to transition. Now I get what I'm here for. And through a long process, I mean, I left the company, I left with no job. I took off 9 months to figure out kind of what I was doing. And part of that process was, I don't want to do people stuff anymore. I'm going to go and spend my life baking because I love to bake. And after 6 months of baking every single day and suddenly realizing that baking is just as bad as consulting, because at the end of the day, everybody wanted gluten-free, sugar-free baked products. And I was like, you're killing me here. What is the point? And so I realized that where my passion actually is and where my unique proposition is, I guess, is in that I love serving people, and it doesn't have to be food. It can be through curious and brave conversations. And so I went and trained in coaching, and a couple of months later, I woke up one day feeling very energetic, registered a business, put up a page on Facebook, and launched my coaching business. And right from the start, my plan was to work predominantly with women in the mining industry and in STEM careers, and help young professionals make that transition from each stage in their career. And it's, I mean, I could go on forever about this story, but I couldn't leverage my original networks. But my first year or two in my journey of my business was about serving the industry as much as I possibly could, through talks like this, through volunteering to women in mining, through running CV writing workshops, through helping people with their LinkedIn profiles, through doing kind of coaching with everybody I possibly could. And one of the things that happened where my previous relationships did help me was that, as I said earlier, I built a lot of very good relationships, mentoring relationships with a lot of young professionals. And a few of them came to me and said, please, will you coach me? I know you understand my context. Nobody else understands that, and you're the person that I want. And that led to a lot of workshops, which led to a lot of word of mouth referrals, which led to where I am at the moment. And my proposition has changed quite dramatically, but it's also come right back full circle to where it was that I first started. And I can elaborate on that later, but I think I've taken a lot of time talking.
Yeah, that was really great, Bryony. I think first off, I didn't know you were a great baker, which means that when I do see, I need some baked goods, and it won't be. I don't
as
want
long
gluten.
as I can put sugar and gluten in them.
But Bryony, thank you for your honesty. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a high level of EQ to go through the journey that you have been, and even for you to tell us that story, because I think a lot of us sit miserable in a particular job, in a particular role, never actually realizing what the drivers are or what we actually prefer. So, you know, really kudos to you for listening to that gut feeling.
Thank you. I want to say, I just want to interject there. Go read my blogs. I share my dirty laundry in all of my blogs. It's if I've made a mistake, it's in every single blog that I've ever written.
I love that. That's amazing. And it really does create a safe space for people who are struggling sort of with these things by themselves. So just as a follow-up, you know, given this self-reflection that you've done, you know, in the poll at the beginning, we saw that 35% of the people in here are aspiring entrepreneurs. So if you were talking to a coach or a mentee of yours who's thinking about making that leap, what advice would you give them?
Firstly, being in business for yourself is not a sexy proposition. It's damn hard work. So if you are leaving a safe job to go and have a cushy life running your own business, don't do it, because you will work harder than you have ever worked in an employed position. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to say is we need to de-romanticize this idea that running your own business is sexy. It's very, very tough, and it takes a certain mindset. Not everybody is built for running their own business. So know yourself, know what you're good at, know what you're not so good at, and know who you need to surround yourself with. And I would say that's probably my biggest challenge right now, is that both Raina and Marsha have talked essentially about scaling. I'm struggling to scale right now because I'm a one-person business. And one of the biggest challenges of getting work with big companies is if you can't scale your business, if your business doesn't run without you there personally, a lot of companies don't want to work with you, because if you get COVID or you get hit by a bus, there's nobody else to do the work. So that's the other thing, is think very carefully about how you're going to scale your business. What systems you need to put in place, who you need to surround yourself with to support you, and how you're going to delegate that work to others. So when Marsha talks about having brought in a team of Russians and having built a team and having to delegate work to others, I just sit there and go, oh, this sounds like managing a team again. And I know I need to do that to build my business, but it's one of the reasons I left my position, because I really struggled with management. So my advice is you have to know who you are before you go into business. But at the same time, going into business will be the biggest and the best way of finding out who you are. And I think a lot of my clients spend a lot of time thinking about, should they do this? What will be the perfect business to open? What should they be doing? Instead of dipping their toes in the water like I did with baking. I wouldn't have known that I didn't actually want to be a professional baker if I hadn't gone and done that. Before that, I was going, oh, running a bakery would be amazing. But 6 months after getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, every single morning, and baking for people who don't want sugar and gluten, like, no, hell no. This is not the best business, but I wouldn't have known that had I not tried. So I think my other point would be, if you have the luxury of dipping your toe in lots of puddles to figure out where it is you actually want to build a business and whether that is right for you, while you have the safety of working in a kind of safe position, then do that. Ask people what it's like. Surround yourself by people who are doing the kind of work that you think you want to do. Because once you ditch your job with nothing else to go to, it's very hard to go back there.
Absolutely.
That's been my experience. So that's what I want to share.
Thank you, Bryony. That's extremely insightful. And I do see a lot of good messages coming through in the chat. I will open up to questions shortly, but I just want to change tack a little bit and speak a little bit more on the funding and financial side. So Molebokgang, can you tell us a little bit more about the financial institution landscape in South Africa? And what is a DFI? So you said you're part of the IDC. Can you maybe explain what is a DFI and how is it different to a traditional bank? So I'm pretty sure that, you know, we're all going to get schooled here quite well, but hopefully in a good way. Molebokgang, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. I needed to attend to a stakeholder, but yeah. So do you mind saying your question again? Because I think if I heard you right, you sort of want to understand what a DFI is and how the financing landscape is like in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, you spoke about being in the IDC. So what is the IDC versus a bank, and just navigating the financial institutional landscape in South Africa, if you can break that down for us.
So IDC, and let me just maybe rather talk about a development finance institution, which we have a couple of in South Africa and in Africa. is a development finance, and it's mainly focused on issues of development, things like inclusivity, transformation, and it's not very strict when it comes to funding covenants. And by that I mean, if, for example, you go to a commercial bank for funding, they want collateral that will satisfy the credit that they give you. It's some form of security, and they're very big on that. When you come to the likes of IDC or any other development finance institution, yes, security is a factor of consideration, but we are not as strict as a commercial entity. Because often people sort of confuse the two, and they think coming to IDC means IDC will not want security for what they funded, the credit they've given you. But yes, every entity will want security that talks to financial sustainability of an entity, but we are not as strict. A huge part of our mandate is because we are so big on transformation and inclusivity of target groups. And when I say target groups, I mean Black people, previously disadvantaged individual, I mean youth, I mean women. Because we're very big on inclusivity of those target groups. When we get a funding application that probably says 51% women owned, that's a high for us. We get excited over that. A commercial bank, it really doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. The whole point is to make money from your business. They will give you money as long as there's collateral and there's debt serviceability. So those are the sort of two key differences between the two groupings of funding in South Africa.
And I suppose that you're not that strict on security, although it is a factor, and that's in order to enable the transformation and remove the money cycle that, you know, where money is sticking with people who have money or business sticks with people who have business already. Is that a factor of why the IDC is less strict to push the transformation agenda?
Yeah, look, I mean, when you talk about collateral, is like you are going to a bank, you're asking for 200 million, but in your balance sheet, you must have assets almost equivalent to that 200 million. So should you default, at least they can execute on the assets, you know, so to pay themselves back. When you come into IDC and most development finance institutions, I'm not going to take your house as collateral. Your house is your personal asset. So I need to just make sure that in your financial model, your business operating structure, that when I give you money, your revenue is buffered in such a way that you can still service the debt. And you can service the debt, and I'm comfortable enough. When I say buffered, I mean your net profit, rather, you're not left with 1,000 in the bank and you need to pay me 1,000 exactly. I mean, at least you have 2,000 and you need to pay me 1,000, or you have 1,005 and you need to pay me 1,000. So there's something called a ratio, debt serviceability ratio, which is a 1.5 ideally. So you must have 1.5 in order to pay me 1,000, because I don't want you to be insolvent for expanding your business, for taking care of unexpected costs or needs in your business, etc., etc.
Excellent. So thanks for that. So say, for example, I'm a mining entrepreneur. I have a great business plan. I may have a business already. How does somebody, and when should somebody approach the IDC for funding? And here I'm talking about, you know, funding 101, you know, pretend I know nothing. How do I approach the IDC for funding?
And I'm going to be honest with you, and I get into trouble for my honesty. You can't not know nothing. There must be something you know. And earlier on, when the colleagues were talking, and I wanted to talk about a high bandwidth structure, you must have people in your network that know something that can add value to your business model. So if I'm saying I need a financial model on Excel, you must be able to have a connectivity to a CA or financial person that you've worked with along the way or in your family that can help you put it together. So you can't not know anything. You may have a business plan that lacks a few things, in that case, because we are pro-inclusivity, I can hold your hand and say, look, in terms of market entry, I'm not really happy with what you say you'll be doing. I don't think your business is secure. And because of that, I think you should engage this party, that party, maybe Google some more, and then go to them and ask for letters of intent so that you know that once you produce this product, they are interested in purchasing it. It may be a non-committal letter of intent, but you know that there is appetite in the market for it. Unlike giving me a paragraph from Google, you know, so I'm able to handhold, but to an extent.
Yeah, so you got to have something to work with, somebody who already understands their business a little bit, and it must be sustainable, like you said, in order to have that buffer. So there's definitely thresholds and requirements, you know, before one would even consider. And I suppose you've got to have a good plan about what you're going to do with that money. And how much does the IDC then look at things like job creation that would happen from that funding as a factor before, you know, dispensing money or approving a certain project?
In my head, I use the word to answer your question. I won't use it here. So that's our mandate. We need to create jobs in South Africa, which is a very job-depressed economy. It has been made worse by the pandemic. I always say it's always been worse, but it's worse, you know, if I can say that. And that's our mandate. So often you have people who will give you a business plan and they'll say, let me say it's a mine to produce 100,000 tons of something. And because you have mining experts in the team, and you can only employ 120 people and they'll write, I'll employ 2,000 people. We get excited over these numbers, but we do our due diligence and we check how reasonable these numbers are. So yes, we want job creating entities. We love those, but it should be reasonable and it should be in such a way that it doesn't hurt your balance sheet. So you're creating these jobs, but you remain unbuffered. So hence I'm saying it must be reasonable. But yeah, that gives us an orgasm. I'm sorry, but it does.
Thank you so much, Molebokgang. That was great. And I think I learned a lot from that. Thank you very much. Time is going extremely fast. I can't believe we're already almost going to 7:30. I just want to pause at the moment and open up to our participants. If there are any questions that anybody has, you know, to the panel. You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. And I'm just going to skim the chat here. Bryony, there's one for you here in the chat. This is from Nombeko. Being a business owner is hard. So what preparations can you make whilst employed to make sure that you are prepared to start off your business? I think you alluded to some of it, but maybe if there's anything else you want to add. And in the meanwhile, audience, please do put up your hand and then I'll call on you.
I would definitely say do your market research. So if you've got an idea, talk to everybody about it. Find out what the appetite is for your idea and get a sense of how quickly you're going to be able to launch. Don't do your market research once you've kind of left your company. You really need to have a sense of what the market appetite is for what you're wanting to offer before you leave that security. I think the other thing is build your network. So make sure you've got a strong network of people and that you've got good relationships with people, like Rainer and Marsha have said. If you can leverage a network from your past, you're already in a strong position. If you have no network, you're having to do that aspect of work as well as build your business. I think if you're building a business like I've been, so kind of a relatively solopreneur business and service oriented, you need to have some financial kind of certainty. It was a long runway for me to get to a point where I was able to live comfortably off my business. I'll be very honest, my first year in business, I my revenue was almost to the cent the same amount as my first salary in 1998. So you can imagine how tiny my revenue was in my first year of business. Now it's pretty comfortable, but in that first year of business, if I hadn't been in a position I had no debt, I had some savings that I could rely on, and I was financially able to weather that. But there are a lot of people that I know who leave employment with maybe 1 or 2 months of savings, assuming that they're going to be able to cover their costs within a month or 2 or 3. And that's really not the case. So for me, having financial security, having a really strong network, and having a very clear sense of whether there's a market appetite for what you're wanting to offer would be 3 things. Again, I have a blog on what my process was. So if anybody wants to read that and you're doing something similar to me, then it's going to be appropriate for you.
Thank you, Bryony. And I think, again, a theme coming out is, hard work, tapping into your networks. And I like what Molebechang mentioned is, you may have somebody in your friends or family. We often don't think about, the expertise that we have sitting very close to us, but we should, or they say what the 3 F's: friends, foes, and family. And those are the people who may fund you. But friends, fools, and family, sorry. So here's one for Betso, is somebody asking, and maybe there's 2 questions in here, but they're around the same theme. So what sort of supply chain opportunities are there in the mining industry for emerging entrepreneurs or startups? And then how do you win RFQs? They get so many and submit, but no response. And I think there's also something around just awareness of the opportunities. There's open tenders, there's closed tenders. How does somebody, actually engage with supply chain, with the mining procurement teams to get work and to get the much coveted vendor number?
For that question, my advice will be, listen, there's a lot of opportunities out there. What you need to do is to research, and specifically for the mining house you are interested in. Go into their website. They usually advertise their full procurement opportunities. Look at the opportunity, look at your capabilities in-house if you do have it. And if you don't, reach out to the person who's advertised that opportunity to say, listen, I'm in business, I'm interested in this opportunity. What kind of support can you offer me? They will definitely refer you to the enterprise supply development, whereby in those programs, what the intention is to grow and develop small businesses. By that, we look at your financial capabilities, your business management skills, as well as people capabilities, all these elements to ensure that you are well equipped for that particular opportunity.
Thanks, Beth. So yeah, thanks. I think that's sound advice. And I think you have to have your feelers out there to know what opportunities come out so that you are, ready. And the preparation starts a lot before when that tender comes out. And I think that's also a theme that has been coming out. Reina, maybe going to you, what are some of the challenges that you have had, particularly as a female entrepreneur in the mining industry? And maybe you can elaborate on how you have overcome this or how you are overcoming these currently.
Hi, thanks for that, Yusavia. I think I sort of alluded to it initially when you first asked the question. I think when we started, one of the points that, I just want to iterate or reiterate is, I think as female entrepreneurs, we really need to learn how to collaborate more. We need to learn how to work with each other in a way that's quite active, where you know what skill set and what value add you are bringing, and you see the next person you are working with as a resource and a value add to what you need to do in that particular value chain you are working in. So I think, one of the main challenges that I had was, and I'm quite surprised that Bryony said one of her challenges was leveraging her network, because she actually taught me how to leverage my network. So I think
I knew the pitfalls.
So yeah, so I think as female entrepreneurs, learn how to leverage your network, learn how to see yourself as you know, a unique skill that you can bring to the industry, and learn to work with other female entrepreneurs in an honest way, and seeing them also as value add. The second point that I have, I think, you know, when we start off in our own businesses, we sort of, you know, work in a very controlled way. You know, I'm speaking from personal experience where, you know, I wanted to be in control of every aspect of the business, you know, the finances, the accounting, and I'm not even an accountant. I wanted to, you know, be involved in the hiring of people. I wanted to have a say on who joins the team. I still wanted to be on the technical side and the operations. I think you need to learn how to use external resources to make the best of where you want to go, because you don't have, you know, nobody has a speciality in every single field. You know, nobody is skilled in every single field. So, you know, try to use external resources to make the best of, you know, where you're heading. And yeah, I think, you know, in leveraging that, allow, you know, these resources to challenge you. I'll give you an example. Recently, I realized that, you know, I wasn't very good at creating content for my website or creating content about what I do. So I hired a content creator to support me with that. And when we were going through the discovery call, the first thing she said to me was, okay, Raina, so you're sitting in the Shark Tank now. You've got 30 seconds. Tell me what your business does. Tell me who you are and what your business does. And I think, you know, to be honest, it did throw me off guard at the beginning, but I very quickly realized the benefit to knowing who you are and what value add you bring to the industry, and you need to be able to package that in a way that other people feel confident in what you're doing. So, you know, I guess leverage all your resources, collaborate more with female entrepreneurs, see everybody as a value adding resource to where you are going.
Thanks, Raina. I think there's really something about looking at things with a different lens altogether. So where you know, synergies that you can have, and looking at the value that other people can bring. It's a common theme that comes up in many talks that we have as WIMSA, and how women interact with each other, how we can better interact with each other in worst case scenarios where women bring each other down. And I think that's a little bit more too commonplace. So really glad to hear the insights from you, which I think are very true. Bryony, was that a hand up that you had?
No, that was celebrating what Raina was saying.
Okay. Excellent. I'd like to ask Marsha. Marsha, so, you know, Sable, you grew it into this, it was a global company. I mean, you had clients all over Africa, I recall, and it was eventually acquired by Datamine, a very reputable company, and I think that's where your current position is now as Sable lead. And I imagine growing your baby and then having it taken over by Datamine, or making that decision was not an easy one. Can you maybe take us through what were the deciding factors for you, and, you know, maybe just talk us through when is it time to look at moving on from a business that you've grown?
Yes. First of all, it was my age, which is something that you can't do a lot about. So some people would already have been retired by my age. So now you start thinking about succession and making sure your product will go on. I had done that on the technical side, and I had a good team. And but your competitors take advantage of this. And I didn't even realize how much until I was in Datamine, actually. So we'd had people going around, and some funny things happened where long-standing clients would suddenly change to another product without even a tender process or telling us, you know, which is not really supposed to happen. I mean, it's actually outside of the procedures, especially if we're South African, you know. So, you know, we talk about all these things that we're all talking about, but in practice, you know. So I won't say, well, I'm just saying with hindsight, I found out that these, I mean, I'm just going to say it, the Australians, I mean, they're a different breed. Eh? I don't know how they're in but really, they were actually saying, no, they're going to come in. Sable's going to end because it's already been going more than 30 years, which is not true. In the software world, anybody that makes it past 10 years is likely to carry on. If you don't make it past 10 years, you don't get to 10 years, you know that you fail before 10 years. So the fact that we were old meant that we are solid, you know. And then, but the biggest thing was international platforms. So now these bigger companies that we've got as clients, as you said, that took us into China and Canada and South America, wherever, they were starting to say, oh, but we need global offices and stuff like that. Now, you as a South African product battle with that, even though we with tried and tested clients that were global had no problem. You find some corporates with a head office in London, the IT would come and say, yeah, but we need this global thing, and this is now going to be a global standard. And so it was difficult to fight that kind of thing, and it was hitting us. So we wanted to even the playing field. So if we were part of a global, and the mother of our mother is huge, it's like 4.3 billion market capitalization. Canadian company, it's called Constellation Software Incorporated, CSI. And they know about software, and they're a software company, which is great, because often you get bought by somebody who wants to get hold of your clients, use you to generate more business, but it's not in the interest of your product. So if you've spent your life building something, yeah, because there's a need, now that's gonna, you know, that is, I've been there a few times, or people had approached me, and then I realized, no, this is not the way to go. So I was ensuring longevity, and also to learn best practice in the global marketing space, because it's a different thing, eh? And then this mother company, so this company, Vela Software, had just bought Datamine 3 years before. And then they approached us, and it's a very nice model. So you've got to go for a company with the same kind of value system. So they said they don't buy businesses to shut them down, or for a short time, so that if you don't hit your target now, you're going to be out of here. They don't do that, and in software you can't do that. In software, it's a long-term thing. You know, like mining is also a long-term thing. And then they said, look, we'll take your whole team, which of course I needed, but we will do the business aspect and the marketing aspect for you. Now that is such a win for me, because, you know, marketing is the last thing on your list at your time, and now you're so tired. And of course, as a technical person, for me, the business side was also just really an irritation, you know, sort of thing.
The technical product and build your product and have a
and I mean it's really it's worked, hey? No, it's been fantastic. So we're in the 3rd year now.
I mean for any software company to last as long as it did definitely shows I mean the scale of sustainability is higher than, I think, comparing it to an ordinary company, because software and technology changes so quickly. And I think, you know, had it happened a few years ago where people wanted you to be global, had that happened now, I think the whole thought system would have been different, just because COVID has taught us that you can be doing things in far-flung areas of the world and it still works.
Yes.
Where I work in Anglo-American digital, and we've got people all over the place doing great things. I've deployed products to mines I haven't been to because I couldn't, but have done it end to end. So yeah, I think you were maybe before your time, advanced for your time.
That's what a lot of people told me. Unfortunately, it's about 20 years before my time. So, but it mustn't put you off. It means you've got time now, because other people are just playing catch up, you know.
Absolutely. I want to just highlight a common theme and maybe ask Reina, you know, if she's experienced the same thing in her business. We're talking about key man dependency. Marsha, you mentioned it, in terms of, you know, the succession of your business, who was going to take over. I remember that when we were on the other side as a Sable client, we spoke about it. We were like, what happens if Marsha leaves? And we noted it down as a risk. Bryony is talking about the same thing. It's just her, and companies are noticing that, and it's potentially a hindrance. Reina, is that something that you are experiencing or have experienced? I know your company may be a little bit larger. You mentioned having a few employees, but how have you, you know, if it's not an issue, how have you dealt with it?
So NG Global, you know, it's a company that's small but big, if I can call it that. I think small in terms of, you know, the workforce that we have. In terms of succession planning, you know, we are still very much working on that. I think mainly because, you know, myself as the owner and the directors of the business, you know, we've taken a very personal interest in the business in terms of, you know, the product that we deliver. We've taken a lot of ownership of that and almost quite controlling, which I think is natural if you're an entrepreneur and you've started this thing and it's your baby. So it's a little bit difficult to let go in certain aspects. I must say, you know, that is a point of development for myself and probably for a lot of entrepreneurs, is to let go a little bit more, start bringing people on board that can help with the succession planning in case COVID strikes or something like that. So yeah, you know, I think it's something you have to work on. NG Global is certainly working on that, but yeah, I think we're fortunate also is that the business's workforce is also quite young. You know, the directors and the owners are still classified as youth, so we still have that as a positive, but you know, the future is so volatile and uncertain, so it's definitely a point of development for us as well.
Thanks so much, Reina, for that. I'm just going to open up to audience again. Any questions and comments from the audience? You can feel free to just raise your hand. Or you can post it in the chat if you feel more comfortable that way. There is a question here, what is the right years of experience to, you know, before you can start your own business? I don't know if anybody on the panel wants to take that one.
I could speak to it. I would say at least 5. That's the minimum. Okay? Maybe someone else.
And what are the competencies that you're basing that on, Marsha? What do you think is developed in those 5 years that's a prerequisite?
Well, from a technical point of view, you've got to be very good at something yourself before you can get anyone else to do it. Otherwise, you're going to fail. I was fortunate in that, you know, software engineering has got a lot of tools in there that other people go and do in their MBAs, but for us, it's a natural way of working. So you do need a tool set, you know, so that you know how to make a project plan and you know how to do a strategic plan and these kind of things. So if not, you've got to have someone with you. Like, I mean, Bryony, I don't know, you know, partners are riskier. And I mean,
I know.
I've been there.
They're terrifying.
But now, you know, at least if you go in with a partner that has got that kind of skill set, and then the 2 of you together or 3 of you together, but you must realize that this thing can end. So you must be learning all the way and bring in good contractors, good consultants. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, to add to that, I think it depends entirely on the type of business. And I think it depends a lot on your mindset and your natural aptitude. There are certain people who are just natural entrepreneurs. And I know people who've started business straight out of school. In fact, some people who've started businesses while they're at school and done incredibly well. And others who have had 20, 30, 40 years experience and failed miserably in businesses. So for me, it's very much dependent on what is the type of business that you're opening. What is the capital intensive nature of the business? Is it a service? Is it a product? And I absolutely agree. You have to know how to do not just the technical work, but also the running of a business. You have to have done stuff from first principles before you even know how to brief somebody else to do it or get an external party to do work for you. You don't have to have done everything, but you need to understand the language of what you're asking people to do, and whether what they're delivering on is good enough. And I know so many people who are in business who haven't a clue what to ask their accountants to do for them. So they're running their business based on the money in their bank, not on whether they've actually got a proper cash flow. Oh, we've got 100,000 Rand in the bank, we must be fine. But we haven't looked at, well, actually we were owed 500,000 Rand to creditors. And they're managing based on what they see in a bank account, and they're not asking accountants the right questions. And so until you've kind of had a bit of experience and done a few things from few first principles, it's really hard to know what you're actually doing. And I think you're going to pay the school fees in your business if you've got no experience. And especially the more technical your business, I think the more technical competence you need to have, because the business aspects and the administration and the operations can be outsourced to people, but equally so can the technical aspects of it. And I think your business acumen ultimately is what helps you succeed. So if you've got a very narrow view, it's probably going to be quite difficult because you're going to be reliant on a lot of people. I think the more generalist you are, sometimes that's actually quite an asset because it gives you a view of all aspects of the business, and you can buy in the services that you need. But it's, I mean, and I think it's a lot about when you feel ready, and that's going to be different for everybody. So how much experience should you have? I don't know. How long is a piece of string? It's a really tough question to ask. But what I do want to say, and I've had this conversation with a lot of our WIMSA mentees, there are so many opportunities out there. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, I need to open a business so I can leverage those opportunities. I haven't a clue how to deliver on that. And I haven't a clue how to scale my business so that I am still operating a year from now. But because there's an opportunity and I'm seeing tenders going out for that, I must start a business. And I think that's not necessarily the right approach to take. If you don't even know the first thing about the business that you're trying to start, I think you're starting off on a very rocky ground. And so I would say have a basic minimum of having at least done what you're starting from first principles along the full value chain.
I mean, there's the technical aspect, and somebody could be great at what they do technically, but there's the whole business and financial acumen. You know, you mentioned about asking the right questions, and Marsha alluded to it as well. I mean, I have a friend, although not in mining, and exactly as you say, looking at the money in the bank, but doesn't realize that he's actually got a huge cash flow problem, which resulted in a quick route to business rescue. Because, you know, actually he was in a loss-making position. So, and I just, a lot of the small businesses end up being very scared to negotiate once they get, you know, a potential opportunity with maybe a mining house or a large mining house. So I just want to go to you, Betso, and just find out contract negotiations. So, you know, you may be a small business, you know, you're not as large as maybe a multinational. Contract negotiations are tough in general, but I say more so for smaller businesses who don't have the cash flow cushion, they don't have the strong reputation of a larger business, they need payment terms of maybe 10 to 20 days rather than 90 days. So what advice can you give entrepreneurs and small business owners in ensuring they get a fair and favorable deal when they're under pressure just to get the work in the first place? Anything that you can mention around that, Betso?
I'm sorry to interject. Yeah. Sorry, Betso. Sorry, Isavia. I know I'm misbehaving. But I sort of wrote some notes in terms of the first question that was asked about when is the right time. And I'd like to say that because it's not really in synergy with what the other colleagues said. So for me, and what I've seen successful business people, when I look at their profile, that what they've done is they have a very defined they've defined what their why is. And when they go into business, they're going into business to satisfy their why. Maybe I'd like to also encourage the colleagues to read the book by Simon Sinek about why, and you'll understand why people that go into business because of why, which they're actively pursuing, make it more than people that don't know what their why is. So some people actually straight from varsity, they start businesses. Some people straight from matric, they start their business. An idea or an individual will never be perfect enough to start a business. And that's a fact, whether you have 5 years of experience or 10 years of experience. So the key, and it's a very predominant theme that has come out from this, is pulling in the competencies you need, one. And secondly, making sure that the people that you've pulled in buy into your vision. And there's commercial agreements where you can have a shares agreement that says milestone. One is once we reach 1 million revenue point, I'll give you each 1% shares in the business. But for me, it's not really about a number of years. It's more about why and making sure you pull in the right competencies. Most people that have a lot of experience before they go into business, I've noticed from interacting with them that they're not too confident because they're always scared of making mistakes. You know, there's such perfectionists that they don't pursue things because they think they're going to make a mistake. So they're too careful. And people that start right from varsity, after varsity, they make stupid mistakes, but they love the stupid mistakes because that's how they learn. And it's just wonderful to watch. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks for that, Mola. I think that's really valuable. I think we really get molded by our corporate cultures, probably more so than we realize, until you try to venture into something else and realize, you know, wow, I've really been polished into a good corporate citizen, which is to, you know, avoid risk and avoid mistakes, like you say, Mola. Thanks for that. Maybe then moving to Betso and just getting your feedback on that question around how does a small business or you know, a medium-sized business, even a single owner of a business go through contract negotiations and get something favorable from the large mining houses or the larger mining houses, considering that, you know, oftentimes businesses really want the work.
Thanks, Eusavia. To Molebogen's point around equipping yourself with knowledge, you know, my advice will be to entrepreneurs and small businesses. You need to equip yourself with knowledge and understand, especially the two spheres in the mining industry, which is the codes of good practice, as well as the mining charter. You need to familiarize yourself with those two legislative documents, whereby, for instance, the codes of good practice encourage actually the industry to pay our small businesses and even entrepreneurs in less than 15 days. So you need to be knowledgeable about such things when it talks to your cash flow management, that you know what, you can negotiate and say, listen, I've picked something up in the codes of good practice saying that I'm able to be paid in less than 15 days. Is that possible with you? And from a reputational basis, they need to be aware that, you know, your value proposition will take you very far. Like Reina said, and even Brione and Marcia, they alluded to the fact that your network is very key. You need to build your brand and your network, as well as you also need to make sure that you know what you're doing. You are capacitated enough whereby you'll be able to deliver strongly. So that will be my key thoughts.
So knowledge is power. And I think that's what all the ladies have actually mentioned. Ladies, we are approaching 8 o'clock. I just want to open up for if there's any questions from the audience or any last sentiments or thoughts from any of our panelists at this stage. No. Okay. Excellent. Well, from my side, I would really like to thank our panelists. It's been very insightful, and I hope the audience has gained something out of it as well. And I really appreciate your time. Yeah, thanks so much, ladies, and have an awesome evening going forward.